All right, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us for this exciting conversation as part of the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation's Sustainability Series. Today, it's my honor to be hosting this. Again, my name is Bruno Sarda. I'm a professor of practice at the school in the College of Global Futures. I'm also executive director of the Hbcu Institute for Society. And I'm delighted to be your moderator today. And in a second to welcome our speaker, Cassandra Devine. Cassandra is head of operations, finance, and insights for the Wells Fargo Foundation, also leading their work on social impact and sustainability. She also is an adjunct professor with the School of Sustainability here at ASU, as well as a board member of the Institute. She has over 20 years of experience in the financial services industry, has led the development of the company's social impact sustainability strategy to build a more inclusive and sustainable future, oversees operations and insight center of excellence team focused on foundation board governance, grants management, impact measurement, and outcomes. And when she's not doing all of that, she's truly an inspiring leader, engaged community leader, devoted to not just corporate citizenship, but also truly just citizenship overall, and developing young leaders in her professional and personal life. So Cassandra, welcome. And thanks for making yourself available today to our audience. Cassandra and I will have a conversation for a while, and then at some point we'll start taking some questions. So please use the Q&A function to drop your questions, and then so that we can go to them when ready. So Cassandra, welcome again. How are you?
Thank you. I am doing great. Now that we got my Zoom working, I was a little concerned for a minute, yeah. But happy to be here.
The perils of our Zoom life and kind of pandemic new normal. So, well, it's again delightful to have you. So, we're here to talk about leadership and resilience, and you and I have known each other now for a few months, and I've always been inspired and just frankly captivated by how all kinds of different threads come together in your leadership story. But maybe let's just start by having you describe, how do you think of yourself as a leader? How would you describe your leadership style and some of the key principles that guide you as a leader?
That's a really good question. So I would consider myself as a very collaborative individual. My leadership style is pretty facilitative, very transparent, love people just in general. And so I see myself as leading by example and just kind of modeling the expectations of what I would expect people to do themselves. Given the visibility and the openness for voices to be heard, and given the space in the room for vulnerability, I think allows for innovation, creativity, for us to try to reach the end goals and objectives in mind. So very collaborative leadership style, but can definitely be decisive when I need to be. But I think it's really important to get all voices in the room as much as possible, also understanding that everybody as a whole, all people are not extroverts, so also allowing the ability to be flexible and try to get voices in an array of ways, whether that be audio, visual, tactile, or meeting people kind of where they are in their journeys.
Yeah, well, that's a great set of qualities. I think I do a lot of work at the Hbcu Institute on kind of what moral and principles leadership looks like, and you've definitely hit a lot of the notes there. So I think that's a great start. You had shared with me actually in one of our earlier conversations that you actually went to school, to college, and an HBCU, a historically black college and university, and that actually, as did our incoming VP-elect Kamala Harris. And you had mentioned that was a meaningful experience for you. In what way was that?
Well, it was definitely a meaningful experience. I don't necessarily look like it today, but I actually went to college on a track scholarship. So I was a hurdler and a sprinter. And so that's my first, let's say, 2.5, 3 years of school. I was afforded the opportunity to do that. I did fall ill my last year of school. And so I had to take an academic scholarship. But what I will say, going to an HBCU allowed me was the ability and not necessarily know exactly what I wanted to do going into the school, but also always had a love for mathematics. And because I was so high, my math scores and things of that nature was off the charts. As you can imagine, the appreciation for that comprehension had a little bit of opportunity. And so going to that HBCU really afforded me the opportunity to meet some professors that really helped meet me where I was in my journey and help me kind of navigate that process. And not really knowing earlier on that I'm a visionary, so I can see things 20, 30 years down the road that would happen. I'm a strategist. And so slowing my brain down enough to be able to dissect certain things, I was afforded that ability and had the right teachers kind of help me with that. So it wasn't necessarily the comprehension, as I found out. It was more around how to take my unique skill set and slow my brain down a little bit enough to kind of hear the now and be present. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to be there and get that guidance that I don't know I would have necessarily have gotten that had I not had my start there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And in fact, you highlight the importance of the right teachers kind of seeing you for all your potential and then helping kind of harness that potential. And you actually started out your career, right, as a math teacher. So, and by the way, I'm very jealous because math was always the hardest for me. But so you took both that, that strength in mathematics along with that passion for when teachers bring the best of themselves to the classroom. So tell us about that. Tell us about that start of your career and kind of how that helped shape who you are today.
Well, I believe it definitely totally helped shape where I am today. I was asked, I'm a certified secondary math teacher. And so one would normally go into the high school or upper middle school to start their teaching. Like I said earlier, I'd taken a scholarship my last year of college, and I had to teach actually back to South Carolina for 2 years to honor that scholarship. And so was asked to actually go into a 5th grade class and teach algebra concepts at an at-risk neighborhood in Beaufort, South Carolina, where they said kids couldn't learn. Kids were coming to school with empty bellies. Parents had to work. You had a lot of latchkey kids going home and things of that nature. And it was really my first introduction into that severe type of poverty and the lack of trust and support and understanding that all kids can learn if given the right environment. And so I think back now and reflect often on my college experience and the teachers that helped me. And it really brought me back to that point to say, hey, this, although slightly different, there are a lot of similarities here. And if we can get these bellies full, and if we could create some community opportunities to get the school involved, and we can do some outreach support, what can't we do? And so, so my first couple of years out of college, I went down to Beaufort and I taught, like I said, algebra to those kids, utilizing an array of manipulatives and things of that nature to meet the students where they were. and had 98% success rate in the grade testing and things of that nature. And so, and I still am in touch with some of those kids today, but it definitely helped add on to those building blocks of who I am today, having the empathy and kind of the wherewithal to kind of know how to use that barometer and what is your gut telling you, et cetera.
Oh, that's some impressive results. No, and I love how you connected both the conditions going in, basically, you know, dropping you into something where they said, you know, these are kids who can't learn. And then, you know, that you recognize that a lot of the problem was this lack of trust and creating, you know, a different dynamic of trust and believing, because it's hard to believe in yourself when nobody else does. And, you know, there's that kind of cycle there. So empathy for sure. And I like that image of the barometer. And so fast forward, you know, you had also shared, you know, you're a cancer survivor, that you shared with me that this battle with this disease had been, I mean, you know, I think we all know how hard it must be, but that it just didn't just kind of test your strength and resolve as a person and as a leader, but it really helped you see also maybe similar to what you saw when you were in the educational system, that when you were so deeply engaged in the healthcare system, that there were some key kind of justice and equity issues there as well, that inspired you also to want to do more for others who can't necessarily advocate for themselves. Tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in my role for almost, well, at the company for almost 20 years now. So almost 8 years in, I married my awesome husband, and we decided to have kids roughly 3 years later. And like I said earlier, avid athlete, top of mind. I mean, you're looking at someone that was in the gym 2 to 3 times a week. My husband and I traveled quite a bit. And so at that point, you know, I'm 30, 31 years old. And so we were fortunate enough to get pregnant with my daughter. And I became very ill mid pregnancy. And so I was on bed rest with her. And thankfully, we were blessed. And she is here today. She's 13 years old. Her name is Devine. But a year later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. Mm. And I firmly believed within myself that there were, between the meals, the medicines, and something just got off balance, you know, with my body in general. So a year later, I'm diagnosed with cancer, not only with breast cancer. I also had what they call the BRCA gene. They tested me for that. And so shortly, that just means I have a higher risk of recurrence of breast cancer and other types of cancers through my body. As you can kind of see the thread of the narrative I'm sharing with you all, illness has been a common thread throughout my life. It's always been, you know, something. And so the doctor, they said that they needed to have a conversation with me and wanted me to do the biopsy. And so this was Mother's Day weekend. And that Monday they called me to let me know that I did have the cancer. So just to kind of make this concise, I've had over 7 surgeries. I've stopped counting after 7. I've had chemo, I've had radiation, double mastectomy, anything that you could think of from a surgery perspective, hysterectomy, you name it, I've had it. But what I recognize, you know, we have 2 major hospitals here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and one is a private, one is a public. I saw pros and cons on both sides. But what I recognized through that process, like I said earlier, I'm a visionary, I'm a strategist. And so I would find myself laying in the bed thinking, you know, if the nurses did X this way, you this could be a little bit more efficient. And then I would find myself in the other hospitals thinking, if they just made this slight tweak, what could the bed service be? But what really landed hard with me is when I went to go get my chemo treatments, and I would go get chemo, and then the following day I would have to go and get a shot to try to help, my immune system kind of stay afloat here. And the shot, just to let you know, thankfully that I had great health care. Because my copay was $25, but the shot, every time I went to get that shot the following day, and I would go get chemo every other week, the shot itself was $10,000. And so I asked the question one day, what do people do that don't necessarily, that don't have health care? I'm not necessarily seeing people that look like me around me, and I'm getting this shot. How do others who don't have the same abilities as me get that? And the answer to that is they don't. Oftentimes they just have to find their best way to stay safe. And then some of the drugs that I was receiving, not all people, kind of qualified for those drugs. Had to honestly say that did something to me. And I've never been the same. And, I vowed to myself that when I went back to work, I was going to do everything in my power to really try to bring some visibility to this. And so at that time I was in supply chain, overseeing supply diversity and outreach programs for the company. And then saw an opportunity to go and actually work permanently in sustainability. And that's how I transitioned from supply chain and supply diversity into sustainability. All of my older roles had some aspects of sustainability, environmental in it. It wasn't a full-time role. And since then I've been getting up every day and trying to make a difference in that way, from an environmental justice to a social justice, from a human rights perspective, to just being and understanding kind of where people are.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Cassandra. I mean, it sounds like the kind of experience you can only know if you've experienced it, but it speaks to your resolve and your ability to look past all these tribulations and keep your mind focused on the welfare of others. You had also said to me when you came back to work, it wasn't just with this determination to make a difference for others, but that you came with this different lens and empowered to be truly your authentic self. What was different, and how can others learn from it who may be struggling to bring their full selves to their work?
I think the biggest difference wasn't, I've always had dark skin, high cheekbones. When I ran track, if I didn't open my mouth, and I think I shared this with you, Bruno, or if I'm in an airport, most of the time people don't even think I'm from America. They don't even think I'm from the US. I spent some time last year in South Africa, and we had an exchange student that actually lived with us for a little while. And so went back to see her and do some mission work in South Africa last year. And I kept my passport close to me because people thought that I was from South Africa and not from the US. And so, I utilized that as an analogy, because when I went back to work, I left having a lot of hair, a head full of hair on my head. I left looking really, really strong. My limbs and how I use them. And, they talk about the brain fog of the kind of the cancer brain. And so when I left, my speed and how I got things done was very different. But not only that, how I looked was very different. And so when I was going through my chemo treatments and et cetera, I couldn't wear wigs and stuff like that because my body, I didn't say this, but my body was kind of allergic to every drug that they gave me. So for almost 8 months, I felt like my body was on fire from head to toe. So I couldn't wear all of these extra amenities to try to, to try to help glamorize myself. But what I learned through that process is I was enough the way that I am. And I just fell in love with me. So when it was time to go back to work, I was bald. I had no hair. I had no eyelashes. I had no eyebrows. All I had was the dimple that you see on my right cheek, a pair of earrings, and I put a little bit of makeup. I don't wear a lot of makeup, but I went to work very how you see me today, except for this is a lot of hair today. And you see eyebrows and you see lashes. So imagine seeing me that way with nothing. And I went to work and I went into my office and I observed how people felt coming into my office and, excited to see me. And the looks on their faces, I think was the thing that changed me because I had to make them comfortable with me. I had to make them, they went off of my energy, right? And so it got to a point where people in the office started cutting their hair. It just became this thing, and it became this energy, and it became this. Well, if Cassandra can come back and she can do it, we can. And it became this less about how you're doing, but more about, is there anything that you need? And then it shifted from, is there anything that you need, pretty quickly, to she's not only as good as she was before she left, but she's delivering even better. And so I had to pivot the skill set that I had before I left, and started utilizing my brain more. I started delegating a little bit more. And it just became this new culture and ecosystem that was just beautiful. And so I've just evolved that since that day. The other thing that I would say about it also, Bruno, is that, as we're talking to the students today, it's always have a plan. When I left, it wasn't that I had time to prepare. My team was able to lead, and they didn't have to bring anybody in to manage my work or my team while I was out. If anything, when I came back to work, I got promoted because the plan and the team knew what to do. And so making sure you have those transferable skills and that you're able to collaborate and work together is so important, because they did not have to have anybody step in for me while I was out. And I also utilize that practice today with my team. And I make it no secret that I'm a cancer survivor, and we always need to have a second plan. And so I just think that's really important, and not just in your career, but in all things that you do. Life does happen or could happen. And so how do you make sure that you're able to navigate that if and when it does happen?
Wow, there was a lot in there. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, I love the way you had this moment where you're like, that in fact, you were enough, and that you kind of learn how to fall in love with yourself and kind of exactly who you were, and how that positive energy really radiated into all those around you. And then I think this idea of having a plan, especially, in a time like now, when there's so much uncertainty, and it's easy to say, well, we have no idea what the future holds, therefore we can't make plans. I'm like you. I'm a believer that you plan based on what you know, and then you have to know how to pivot and how to be agile. But the lack of certainty is certainly no excuse for the lack of planning. So I'm definitely with you on that. So I think throughout your journey and those kind of experiences that have really built you as a leader, I mean, not just through your career, as I mentioned when we started today, also in your community around you, in your mission work, you've become a powerful voice for those who don't necessarily have one. And when I think of this year, 2020, it's been a really hard year. I mean, it's been a hard year for everybody. It's been a harder year for yet many people. We've had obviously global health crisis, economic crisis for many. climate change is certainly no less of a concern. We've seen tremendous devastation wrought by whether it's wildfires, whether it's floods and hurricanes, and many other aspects. And then, in the US, but certainly not just in the US, this kind of difficult and unfinished conversation about racism, racial justice in America that led to a strong mobilization, again, after a series of tragic events that were in full display for everybody. And this has gone from the streets to the boardrooms, to the polls, to chat rooms, and some progress, but also a lot of just talk. What lessons can we draw from 2020? These kind of multi-layered crises, and really testing our resolve as human beings, as leaders, and how we go into 2021. What lessons will you kind of take into the new year from this difficult past year?
I think for me personally, is that if nothing, as we think about racial equity and injustice and the impacts of COVID-19, that we're all people, we are all human, and no one is exempt. So if you ask me, what is the biggest lesson learned for me? No one is exempt. We are all impacted when we think of things as climate change and what we see that's happening from a COVID-19 perspective. I think also learning, this was a year of learning. And I feel that we saw from a racial equity perspective and social justice perspective, there have been a lot of impacts from that, but I am an optimist. So I'm always looking at and what have we also seen? And what we've also seen is Cassandra and Bruno having a conversation about HBCUs and racial equity, and how do we begin to understand one another? I've had a lot of conversations around that, not only with you, Bruno, but just HBCUs. I used to had to define for people or describe what an HBCU is. And I feel the world as a whole now understands that historically Black college or university, that's not a norm. That wasn't a norm before 2020. I also think that, we've heard before that small businesses are the backbone of our country. I think that 2020 has really shown us what that means, and that we all play a role in bringing solutions and making sure that we are buying from our small businesses. And so the organization I work for, we're doing a lot in that space. So this was a year of learning. It was a year of crying. It was a year of I've been on calls with some folks, of being down a little bit. It was a year of reimagining what our school systems are going to be like. And so I think what it showed us is, from a US perspective, globally as well, but particularly in the US, we have a lot of work to do to mend and join forces as a one body. And I think we just recognize that we have, I believe, more to do than what we thought we had to do.
Yeah, that's.
But we can get there. I mean, I think there is no pill that's going to get us there, right, Bruno? There is rolling sleeves up and saying, how can we go it together and not alone?
For sure, this is not something a vaccine can do for us. So that's a great analogy. I'll have one more question for you for now, and then I've seen questions start flowing in. But if you have questions, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A. But Cassandra, maybe before we go to audience questions, you were recently recognized with an award for Women in Leadership Award, and Me Too seems like it's already so long ago, this movement and this whole consciousness, and yet, that's also very much something where there's, I think, a lot more to do than we thought there was to do, maybe, and so much progress yet to be achieved. I guess, what advice would you give to aspiring women leaders who are looking to succeed and to advance and to bring their full authentic selves to their work, and not feel like they have to fit in a particular box or mold, or compromise any part of either their values or their principles?
This is, I work with a lot of young people. And so for me, what I would say is be confident in who you are. You are enough. You have all of the tools that you need to be successful. Have fun along the way. Sorry, I think I put this on mute. Can you hear me, Bruno?
Yeah, I can hear you.
You are just as capable as the person beside you. I think the biggest thing that I learned, and that if I go back to how I started in my college career, is don't let anybody define for you who you are and what you can and cannot do. What one person saw as a comprehension issue, another person saw as innovation and creativity. And so as long as you can dream and stay focused on that dream and continue to chip a little bit away on that dream each day, the sky is the limit. I was a math teacher. I left teaching because my sister purchased a house at 20 years old. So I thought I had to purchase a house at 21 years old. Now my sister she's a reporter. I mean, she works in reporting and analytics. She's a coder. And so you can imagine what her salary was at that time versus my salary. And so when I started out, I was making $23,000 a year teaching. I purchased a home and I was teaching, I was coaching track, I was working at Office Depot, I was, you name it, I had 20 jobs. And something about that didn't feel right to me. And so I posted for a position to stop teaching, not because I didn't love it, but because I couldn't afford to teach. And so I took those skills and they were transferable. And I showed up in Charlotte, North Carolina with a teacher outfit on and a number 2 pencil my first day at work. And I looked around me and I saw, and at that point I was 25 years old. And I looked around me and I saw suits, I saw briefcases, I saw at that time, Bruno, I'm going to date myself, Franklin planners. And the first meeting on the job, day one, my boss took me into an executive meeting with what we call a C-suite meeting. And I had a number 2 pencil and a pad. She gave me a pad to write on. And I was sitting in that meeting and I was just intrigued by the conversation that was happening. Again, I was a math teacher. At that time, I was teaching high school. So this is day one on the job. I was 10 minutes late to work because I've never worked in a high-rise facility. And I didn't realize how hard it was to find parking day one, how hard it was to find parking uptown. And so I had to pay for parking that day. Again, school teacher. Why do I paint that picture? When I got off of work that day, I don't believe in happenstance. I think things happen for a reason. That's just Cassandra. I told you I worked at Office Depot. I got off of work. I got in my car. I went, there was Office Depot, there was a TJ Maxx, and then something else beside it. I got off of work. I went to Office Depot. I bought me a briefcase. I bought me a Franklin planner. I went to TJ Maxx and I bought a suit and two shirts. I bought a black suit because that's all I could afford at that time. And I bought 2 shirts and some shoes. And I went in the next day and my boss didn't even recognize me. And the rest is history. I was able to, with my first paycheck, get caught up on all my bills. I stayed in that role for 6 months and I've been getting promoted ever since. And it's not because I was smarter than anyone else. It's because I have a lot of common sense. I understand relationships. I understand people. I know how to network. And I understand the questions that are not being asked. And so just kind of tying all of that together, I would say, as a woman, as a male, as a young adult, you can do anything that you put your mind to. If I can do it, I'm from Marion, South Carolina. You can do it.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Cassandra. I think there's so many threads there. I think this combination of just, keeping your eye on the horizon, your, I think, enduring optimism and can-do-itiveness, and but just also work ethic and just, getting it done and not feeling sorry for yourself sounds like a very, very common thread there. So we have a bunch of audience questions. So I'm going to kind of jump around, and we may get to many of them, and if not, some that maybe things maybe we can follow up in writing. But maybe start with one question here is who are your kind of heroes or sheroes, including in the sustainability realm or in the fight for social justice, or maybe more broadly, kind of who inspire you, who are kind of your role models?
Yeah, it's just one that has always been Nelson Mandela. I had the opportunity to go and visit his jail, and with everything that he went through and the humility, and if you and just the way he leads, from his walk to how he talks to how he doesn't meet a stranger, to he's present with every individual. I mourned his loss because that was just always one of my dreams, to be able to meet him and sit down and have a conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was able to visit the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg too, as well. Just where they recreated his cell. It wasn't the actual cell, but they recreated it, and you realize how small it was and how lonely he must have been. But yeah, such an inspiring figure. One question is around, and you mentioned small business, but kind of your ideas on what companies, including small companies, could or should be doing more of, or differently maybe, to address these questions of social justice, economic disparities. So kind of beyond the obvious kind of business model, where's the role of business in addressing some of these societal issues?
Yeah, I think teaming up is a really important one. And I think the way that we look at mentoring and building our pipeline is where I would say the opportunity is. I've done a lot of work around innovation and how do we solve solutions? How do we come up with solutions for the future? But the more I live, I don't know if it's necessarily that, or if it's more around kind of teaming and preparing those that are coming behind us to be able to continue and sustain. So I think that's really, really, really important as we start to think about the evolution and where we're headed. I think the way that you start to address the social issues is we could start seeing some of these businesses team, and not with people that we're most comfortable with teaming with, right? How do we start to collaborate and do initiatives and projects potentially together with people that don't necessarily look like us? I think that there's a unique opportunity there.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Actually, that touches on a couple other questions later in the Q&A about, what it's going to take to potentially work with people who have these different views, different beliefs, but yet, when we get to sit down with, we realize we have much more in common than not. But often, what separates us is often what gets highlighted. There's a couple of questions that it's funny, like some students asking, and then actually somebody who's an educator asking, leadership is sometimes made, sometimes, it's like, are leaders born? Are they made? Are they taught? Are they made through this crucible of battle? Or, but this idea of if you are not, don't see yourself as a leader, or see people who don't see themselves as a leader, whether as an educator or as an individual, what are some of the techniques, the ideas of kind of either, fake it till you make it, or kind of crawl before you walk, or any advice on kind of giving people some small steps to test out what kind of feeling like a leader might be like?
Yeah, I think we make leadership too complex. That's just me. I mean, so you had a homework assignment, you have a test tomorrow, right? Are you prepared? Are you leading yourself to be prepared to deliver? And so, listen, I feel that we all have leadership attributes in ourselves. I feel that everyone has a role to play in order to reach a common goal. I was watching something the other day, and it really resonated with me in that what we should be seeking to understand is our purpose and our role. And then how do we really get great at that and leading in that space, or whatever your role is. Someone said to me, and I know this is sustainability, so this may not land as well, so give me a little bit of grace. But a chicken was born to, was raised, and it's a delicacy, and regardless of where you go across the world, you have people that are eating chicken. What you look at an eagle, and their wing spread is, as wide as around 9 feet. But would you think about, what is the eagle's role? And then if you look at a peacock, you see how beautiful it is, and its wings are also, but you don't see them flying everywhere. What is that peacock's role? And so at the end of the day, I think we should really get clear on, where am I my best self? Where can I bring my passions? And then how do I lead from there and be that best self that I possibly can be? There's always going to be someone that can direct, or lead an organization. And there's someone else within the organization is leading a component. But at the end of the day, it's going to take all of us to hear that beautiful symphony in that sheet of music. And so I think that we all are leaders in some sort of way. It's just, what is our role, and how do we make sure we're playing our best part in that?
Yeah, I love that, Cassandra. I mean, that's very close to, I think I agree with you. I think we've made leadership too complex. In some ways, we've made it a bit too elitist, that leaders are anointed. But the fact is, leadership, first and foremost, is a behavior, is a set of practices. Any of us can lead ourselves, as you point out. That's certainly where to start. Because if you don't do that, others are much less likely to follow your lead if you can't follow your lead. Actually, I think you touched on something. One question that came in, thanking you for sharing this beautiful and interesting journey. And you mentioned, this life full of determination, and yet at the same time full of obstacles, including illness. And the question is, what would you say is your all caps why? What keeps you motivated to continue being this high performer, this visionary, this optimist, this giver? In such high generosity of spirit. What's your secret sauce?
Man, that is a great question. I'm not supposed to be living. If I live every day as if, honestly, you hear it, but I live every day as if it's my last day. What gets me up in the morning is seeing other people smile. I ultimately believe that my gift to the world is my smile and the voice to say you can, right? So what keeps me going is the fact that I was given a 9 lives and that I'm able to still be here living and breathing. And at the end of the day, what you think is an issue or the sky is falling or the world is coming to an end, just to be able to get up every morning and breathe in air, I haven't always been able to do that easily, or to put one foot in front of the other. That's a gift, you know. So if everything was taken away from me today, and all I had was, you know, my family, I'm rich, I'm wealthy just by having my health, right? Um, I wake up just grateful because I know what it felt like not to have that.
That's beautiful. So, you know, after all, this is in the context of a school of sustainability, an institute of sustainability. You yourself have been and are a leader in the realm of sustainability, and sustainability is a field where sometimes you are that kind of lone voice. You might be the only person with that job in an organization, and that
Yeah.
self-motivation certainly matters. But if you kind of put the sustainability lens on, you know,
Mm-hmm.
how do you lead in sustainability? How, you know, are there any specific criteria or practices or advice you would have to those who, you know, maybe trying about that sustainable change in their organization, in their community, without, frankly, a whole lot of empowerment, probably not a whole lot of authority, often without a whole lot of resources, but a lot of passion and a lot of heart. Um, uh, what, what have you seen in this field in terms of kind of successfully leading through the lens of sustainability?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, that's exactly what I was hired to do. Um, so again, I think the types of roles that have made it to my way have always been those roles when they said that nothing was possible, or that it was not possible. And so when I took over employee engagement and sustainable supply chain, or building out sustainability in those ways for the company, I was given a kind of almost a blank sheet of paper to do that. So influence is really important. Um, Understanding that the nomenclature that you utilize that people don't necessarily understand. And so how do you make a topic that's very complex as simple as you possibly can, and provide ease in those nuggets of information along the way? And so um, that's what I did. And I was presented with the answer of no more times than I can remember. But I felt that it was important for us to make some segue. And so what I did was introduce a topic of sustainability with, in a way that folks could get it and kind of understand. I may not totally get this piece of it, but I do understand this piece of it. And so I was able to roll out what we call the Impact Today for Sustainable Tomorrow campaign. And what it did is, as an example, is it met folks where they were in their sustainability journey, giving them some education along the way, and then giving them opportunities to apply it. We then linked all of that body of work that we were doing with the broader corporate social responsibility body of work. And so then we embedded it within our goals. So not only were they seeing, oh, I really like these components. I learned this, and this is what the company is doing holistically on one hand. And then we were able to start weaving in some of the human rights elements and kind of showcase how they work together. What I will tell you is that it didn't happen overnight. It's about a 2.5-year process, going on about 4.5 years. And then we teamed up with with ASU to collaborate on some other things as an example with and with other organizations to help us kind of tell that narrative a bit more. So what I would say is leading by influence, giving examples, helping them experience it along the way in ways that they understand it to get buy-in, and then just keep adding nuggets along the way. But it takes time.
Yeah, for sure. Plenty of great lessons in there. And I think, to, celebrating those wins along the way and making sure that, this kind of inclusive approach so that, many organizations that often have small sustainability departments, kind of have an easy way to bring folks who are interested but not necessarily responsible for this work. And it's a way to kind of both kind of crowdsource your labor sometimes, but also give people a chance to bring what they have to contribute. So I'll mention, by the way, that in the Q&A that I'm looking through here, one of our audience members. Again, thank you so much for the inspiring webinar, and is actually connecting with us from the United Arab Emirates, where it's midnight, but felt like this was very well worth staying up for. So
Oh,
thank you for staying up with us. I guess another question, since you were just kind of describing a little bit of what's happening there at Wells, somebody was saying they've noticed actually a decent number of job roles posted for, with sustainability in the various last few weeks in many different cities. It seems, like many large organizations, it's been kind of a bit of a rolling thunder and kind of rising in influence and importance and external messaging. Where would you say you all are in this journey and in this kind of maybe recent wave of kind of new positions? Is there kind of a step change coming, or?
Yeah, so if you've been following our journey, we recently in June had a new Chief Social Impact and Sustainability Officer named by a gentleman by the name of Nate Hersov, who I report to. And I've been in my current role because prior to, I was the head of enterprise sustainability. And so you see the naming now, kind of where I am and kind of overseeing and helping the leadership team. We're overseeing kind of the strategy over the operations, kind of our finance and our insights and analytics component. And so what we recognize is that as we are evolving, that the work is evolving, right? And so we want to make sure that we have the skills and the talent to evolve along with that. And so we're definitely taking a look at, what's working really well. Where do we believe that, we need some additional talent? And so those roles were posted because those are areas where we felt that we could strengthen the body of work that we're leading across the company. So that's kind of where we are. The position is posted, I think, maybe 2 weeks ago. And so there's an area that we're looking at from a sustainable finance perspective. We had a few roles that were posted there. If you've been, again, watching our journey, you see that from a financial health perspective, we've added a role there. Housing affordability, we definitely, I think there are 2 roles that were posted in that space. And then the small business growth that I touched on just a little bit, there is a small business lead specialist role that's posted there. And then there are 2 roles on the body of work that I just talked about that I'm now leading. We're looking at a foundation grants manager role and then a operations and strategy role. And so as we are continuing to evolve as an organization, we believe these roles are going to really be key additions to the already, and I'll be selfish in saying kind of great work we're doing as a team today to try to move this body of work and make an impact, to the community, and as well as continue to educate and influence internally as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, thanks for that update. And it's exciting to see all these new positions coming, especially at a time when the economic news isn't always much to rejoice about in the daily news. So for those who are listening and interested, go look for those jobs and see if you can throw your hat in. We just have a couple minutes left. I'll just ask you one last question before I wrap up. It's a very short one. It's basically, is there a book you've read either in the last recent while or ever? Like, is there one book that you would say to anyone, yeah, go read that, you won't regret it? Like, is there something that stands out to you?
Something that's standing out to me right now is I just purchased, her name leaves me, Simone. Oh, her name leaves me. So I've been intrigued. Oh, her name leaves me. I have to email it to you, Bruno, but I've been really intrigued by just the whole process around the world coming together from a voting perspective. If you've seen just the sheer numbers of how the US and how everyone got out to vote, I've just really been impressed by that. And the name just leaves me, the name of the book. I'm sorry, I will email it to you.
No, it's all right. We'll follow up,
but it's focused on that one. And as soon as I hang up, I thought it was going to come back to me, but I cannot think of the name of the book. So I'm reading that one, and then also reading historical archives as it relates to the Constitution and how we've evolved over time. So just doing a whole bunch of research around that. But I'm just really intrigued on just this kind of how we're evolving as a world, and we are we're using our voices to be heard. So I'm just really excited about kind of where we are as an economy, and where we're headed around using our voice, regardless of where you are in your decisioning. Just getting out to vote, I think, is really important. So I've been doing a lot of reading around why people vote, why they don't vote, and kind of what our roles are to play in that.
Somebody posted, by the way, if the book you're talking about is The Voter's Self-Defense by Simone de Moore. Is that it?
Yes. Thank you.
The community to the rescue. Well,
yes, thank you.
We're out of time. Wish we could keep going, but thank you so much for sharing your journey, your story, your insights, of as leader, resilient, undying optimism, and this amazing faith and trust that you have in others, which I think is absolutely what we need a lot more of, and that we need to see each other for all that we are and not all that we aren't, or all that we disagree.
Yes.
So thank you again so much. And Lauren, I'll turn it back over to you.